but the effective temperature, in other words, you get it down by melting ice caps, and which is what is happening, and the change of glaciers. So that is, to me, a question of fact. What is the question to me also is of pollution, which is that we're generating CO2, and the large problem for the world is to reduce the generation. There's enough oil, of course, but we don't want to do that. There's enough oil in the Rockall Trench, which is near the island of Rockall under seas, which is why Thatcher put the flag up on Rockall about 2 years before it was announced. Ditto, off Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, there are oil in the sea. Ditto, the South Atlantic, oil is accessible. They're accessible once oil gets to about $200 a barrel. In other words, this is a question of effort if required. It's a profit generated at present, so it won't happen. It's a social, under a proper society, a social society, it should not happen. There are alternatives to energy. There are a lot of blue skies now. From the Institute of Engineering and Technology, the stuff coming up. Looking, for example, if you take water out of a river, and water out of the sea, you put a membrane between them, as an osmotic pressure develops. There's an energy source there. There's a lot of water coming out of the rivers, there's a lot of sea there. These are energy to looking to see if they can make engine. With refrigeration problems. You can in fact make solid state. They're working on solid state refrigeration, merely by changing the magnetic orientation within an atom or molecule, and this gives you a different behaviour, which in fact absorbs energy here or gives it up there. So you've got basic refrigeration. A hell of a lot of stuff is around, it's possible. It will not happen under capitalism. And I was joined the Socialist Party, Great Britain, in '43, and believed, still believe, that socialism was possible and essential. As a result of that, I became a Bevan boy and got one of these badges 60 years later. And having gone down, it was hot. I did that 3 years because I really believed that socialism was possible, and I'm bloody annoyed that none of you have managed to do it yet, not I. And this is because I thought it was real. I still do think it's possible. I think it's essential. So that was already what I was doing 3 years. But when I went down there were old, or not so old miners working away. They were still there when I left. They were driven there, not by Mr. Bevan, but by poverty. And the only way we can get around that is to change society and stop and find alternative ways of generating energy and stop delivering CO2. I think also, for example, the attitude to the personal car. When I was a little boy before the war, stand on the arterial road and every 20 minutes a car would come past, you know. And now we have another 10 million cars more than we need.
Could I just stop you there?
Thank you.
Yeah.
How important it is to do it, and the incentive is not there under capitalism, only under socialism.
Right.
Onto the kayak going through the Northwest Passage. I think we discussed this out 1 hour in our tent, and there was a huge Coast Guard presence of the Canadians, which hasn't been there before. And also there's a strange thing about, I don't know the legalities of this, but if you there are, if you like, territorial waters around most continents and countries. And Canada has a kind of strange situation because, as you know, it's an archipelago of many, many islands. And America is saying, well, actually, it only goes, you know, just slightly north. We go where we want the Northwest Passage. And indeed, I think it was the Manhattan years ago, a big icebreaker that they sent through the Northwest Passage just to sort of puff their feathers up, this is the Americans, and say, we have rights through this place. So I think in answer to your question, it wouldn't surprise me at all. You're absolutely right, Russia did stake a bit of a claim in the North Pole. The Alberta tar sands, America's just paid Canada for access to the Alberta tar sands. It takes about 6 barrels of perfectly good, clean, fresh water to make 1 barrel of oil out of the Alberta tar sands. I don't know about whether America will go to war with Canada, but they are really at loggerheads at the moment over these territorial rights around this big archipelago of islands. Does Canada extend right north of Baffin and so on, or does it just then extend into that little bit of the Northwest Passage? There may well be, and I think when things get nasty, I mean, America's already shown its colours in terms of oil, hasn't it? I mean, if it wants oil, it'll go and kill people. I think quite possible. I don't know about Canada though. I think it would be a serious state if they declare war on Canada.
Right. Last winter being the coldest winter. Well, the questioner may have missed the point that it's only winter one half of the globe. I'm in contact on a discussion forum with a couple of people living in Australia, and they mentioned casually in passing that they've had the hottest summer in recorded history, and they've currently got the worst drought that has occurred in Australia since Captain Cook discovered Botany Bay. So the thing is, global warming is a general trend. It's not. It doesn't preclude colder patches. It's the trend that you follow. It's a bit like unemployment since the war. It's always gone down and up and down and up. But each peak has always been higher than the last one. So the trend in unemployment is up. So it is with global warming. The question I'd like to put to both speakers is concerning energy production. Having used the words fuels, emissions, and pollutants, and sort of conflated the whole thing. These are separate things that ought to be not to be bundled together as if they're the same thing. Bearing in mind that if we achieve socialism, we'll need to raise the living standards of what is now called the undeveloped world, the third world. How do the speakers see us doing that without contributing to global warming by burning fossil fuels? And the suggestion is being that, and I think it's the right one, is that burning fossil fuel and generating electricity are the 2 main contributors to CO2 and global warming. What possible alternatives are there for energy production which will be needed to raise living standards to what might be called an acceptable, or thought of as an acceptable standard?
Yeah, I touched on it briefly, that a lot of what I said there, I couldn't claim to be, it was, I think, relevant to mature capitalist states, but less relevant to developing nations. I think it's a very important point. In fact, the Socialist Party has touched on this previously. The pamphlet we produced on production for use, socialism as a practical alternative, where we outlined how socialism, when it comes to pass, if it comes to pass, it would have to ramp up production, food production, massively to feed the starving millions, as it were. And I suppose, this is a subject for discussion. I suppose my feeling is that that's maybe not particularly a realistic view necessarily. I don't take the view that we're going to need to massively ramp up production. We're just going to need to sort of divert it a little bit. As we know, there's super tankers coming from Africa over to Europe with lots of Kenyan green beans in January, which I think the Kenyans probably need more than we do. So looking at food,